Mother-in-law handed me a fake positive pregnancy test in the hospital waiting room. My mother-in-law smiled at me, pressed a pregnancy test into my hand, and just say it's positive. Trust me. I was sitting in a hospital waiting room, 3 days after a miscarriage I hadn't told anyone about, except her. If you enjoy stories like this, hit subscribe because this one gets so much darker before it gets better. My name is Jenna. I was 29 years old, married for 4 years to a man named Marcus, living in a 2-bedroom house in Dayton, Ohio that we'd bought together with my savings, $41,000 I'd put down alone. I worked as a dental hygienist. Marcus sold insurance. On paper, we looked normal. Happy, even. My younger brother, Cole, was the only person who ever looked at Marcus sideways. Cole was 25, worked construction, had rough hands and a soft heart, and he'd driven 6 hours to my wedding just to walk me down the aisle after our dad passed. At the reception, Cole pulled me aside and said, "He watches you like he's keeping score, Jen. I don't like it." I laughed it off. I told him Marcus was just attentive. I was wrong, and some part of me already knew it. Marcus's mother, Diane, moved in with us 8 months into the marriage. Just until she gets back on her feet, Marcus said. She never left. The first year was the honeymoon phase people warn you about later, once it's too late to matter. Marcus brought me flowers on Tuesdays for no reason. He'd write little notes and tuck them into my lunch bag. Diane baked me banana bread and called me her girl. I thought I'd married into a family that actually wanted me. Then the small things started. Marcus began commenting on what I wore to work. "That skirt's a little tight for a dental office, don't you think?" He started checking my phone. "Just to see funny memes," he said. But he'd scroll through my texts for full minutes. Diane started answering questions on my behalf when we had guests over. What I liked to eat, how I felt about things, as if I wasn't sitting right there. Slowly, my friends stopped calling. My best friend Priya texted me less and less until one day she said, "Jenna, every time I invite you somewhere, Marcus has a reason you can't go. Is everything okay?" I told her everything was fine. I stopped answering her texts as quickly. Within 6 months, she stopped texting altogether. The first real incident happened on our 2nd anniversary. I'd made a reservation at the restaurant where we had our first date. Marcus came home late, smelling like whiskey, and when I asked where he'd been, he threw my phone across the kitchen. It shattered against the refrigerator. "You're checking up on me now?" he screamed. Diane stood in the doorway and said nothing, not one word. The next morning, he cried, actual tears. He said his father used to do the same thing to his mother, that he swore he'd never become that man, that he was scared and sorry, and it would never happen again. He bought me a new phone that afternoon. For 2 weeks, he was perfect, softer than I'd ever seen him. That cycle repeated. Each time, the calm after got shorter. 2 weeks became 10 days. 10 days became 4. The second incident was worse. He grabbed my wrist hard enough to leave 4 finger-shaped bruises because I'd gone to lunch with a coworker without checking with him first. Diane saw the bruises the next morning while I was making coffee. She looked at them, looked at me, and said, "You probably just bruise easy, honey. You should eat more red meat." I remember standing there with the coffee pot in my hand, completely frozen, wondering if I'd imagined the entire thing. I hadn't told Cole any of this. I was ashamed. I kept thinking I could fix it, that I'd married a good man who was just going through something. Then I got pregnant. I found out on a Thursday. I was so scared and so happy at the same time. That strange mix that doesn't make sense until you've lived it. I told Marcus that night. He held me and cried again. Good tears this time, I thought. And said we were going to be a real family now, that everything would change. 10 weeks in, I started bleeding on a Tuesday morning. Marcus drove me to the hospital. Diane insisted on coming too. I remember the fluorescent lights in the waiting room, the smell of hand sanitizer, the sound of a vending machine humming in the corner. The doctor confirmed what I already knew in my body before anyone said the words out loud. I'd lost the baby. I was gutted, hollowed out. And in the middle of that hollowness, while Marcus stepped out to take a phone call, Diane leaned close to me in the waiting room and pressed something into my palm. A pregnancy test. Positive. Just say it's positive, she whispered, glancing toward the hallway where Marcus had gone. Trust me, it'll buy you time. He gets so much worse when he thinks he's failed at something. If he thinks the baby's still coming, he'll be gentle again. I didn't take the test from her hand right away. I just looked at her and said, "Why would I need to lie to my husband about our baby?" And she said, without blinking, "Because the truth doesn't keep you safe in this family, sweetheart. Lying does." That night back home, I called Cole for the first time in months and told him everything. Not the polished version. All of it. The bruises, the isolation, the fake test in my hand, the miscarriage I'd been too scared to grieve out loud. He was quiet for a long moment, and then he said, "I'm coming to Dayton this weekend. Don't tell him." Cole showed up Saturday morning with a duffel bag and a folder. He'd already started digging. It turned out Marcus had a second bank account Diane helped him open 2 years earlier, and together they'd been quietly funneling money out of our joint account into it. $11,000 over 18 months, labeled as family loans that were never loans at all. Cole found the statements in an old email account I still had access to, one Marcus had forgotten I could log into. There was more. A woman named Renata had been texting Marcus for months, and some of those messages weren't just friendly. Cole printed screenshots. My hands shook reading them at the kitchen table, while Cole sat across from me, jaw tight, saying nothing until I was ready to talk. Then the ticking clock started. Marcus's company was sending him to Cincinnati for training, leaving in 5 days. Diane let it slip at dinner that, "It'll be good for you two to have space." And I understood immediately what she meant. This was the window. Once he left, Diane would run interference, reset the narrative while he was gone, and I'd come back to a version of events where I was the unstable one. I had 5 days to get everything I needed before he disappeared into that gap. The final incident happened 3 nights before he left. I'd asked him, gently, about the second account. He didn't yell first this time. He went quiet, which was somehow worse. Then he grabbed the kitchen table and flipped it, plates and all, glass shattering across the floor, and shoved me hard into the counter. My hip hit the edge so hard I still have a small scar. Diane stood in the hallway again. This time, though, Cole was staying in our guest room, and he heard everything. He came out, put himself between us, and told Marcus, calm as anything, "Touch her again, and I will end you." Marcus backed off. For the first time in 4 years, someone else in that house had power over him. That night, Cole and I built the case. Bank statements, screenshots of the texts with Renata, Photos of my bruises, time-stamped, going back 14 months. Cole even found a doorbell camera recording from the anniversary night, the one where the phone shattered against the fridge. Marcus had forgotten it was still connected to the cloud account under my name. 2 days later, before Marcus left for Cincinnati, I met with a lawyer Cole had found, a woman named Week, a specialist in domestic abuse cases who filed for an emergency protective order that same afternoon. I moved out with Cole's help while Marcus was still 4 hours away, unaware his entire life was about to collapse. When he came home to an empty house and a restraining order taped to the door, he called 43 times in one night. Diane called too, saying I was destroying her son, destroying the family. I didn't answer either of them. The divorce took 7 months. The financial records Cole found were enough to expose the hidden account in court, and I recovered $32,000 of what he'd taken. The texts with Renata became part of the record too. Turns out she was married, and her husband filed his own case once he found out. Marcus lost his job when the affair and the financial mismanagement became office gossip. His company didn't want the liability. Diane tried to save face by telling neighbors I'd fabricated everything, but the protective order and police reports told a different story. And word travels fast in a small enough town. I found out later that Marcus had done something similar to a girlfriend before me. Isolation, control, a gentle cycle of apology and cruelty. Diane had helped him then, too. I wasn't his first. I made sure, through my lawyer, that I wasn't going to be dismissed as his last either. Today, I live 40 minutes from Cole, in a small house with a garden I planted myself. I started therapy, and for the first time in years, I sleep through the night without listening for footsteps. I'm dating no one, and I'm in no rush. Some mornings, I just sit on my porch with coffee and feel the quiet. And it doesn't feel empty anymore. It feels like mine. If this story hit you, hit that subscribe button, because next week, I'm telling you about a woman whose husband forged her signature to sign away her own house, and the neighbor who noticed one tiny detail that unraveled everything. Take care of yourselves, and remember, the people who are supposed to protect you don't always deserve that job.